It is November already. How did that happen? I mean, 1 minute we're complaining about it being too hot, and the next minute there's leaves on the ground all over, and pumpkin spice in everything. It is a time for thankfulness. And I want to challenge you from the onset of November as we are starting a new series. I want to challenge you to be radically grateful for what God has done for you. There's like one person someplace over here who's radically thankful for what God has done for them. Let me parse it this way for a moment. I was saying this in prayer meetings. Some of you should join me. It would increase your thankfulness. If Jesus never did another thing for me again. You're not following me yet. If Jesus never did another thing for me again, he has done more than he should have. And I have more than enough to be grateful for. For what more could we be grateful for than the cross? My sermon is titled today, Radical Forgiveness, and it's actually a part of a sermon series, as I said, that we will be doing throughout the whole month of November. So, you want to be here, and I know there's a little holiday hat coming up, but still be here. Or watch us online. This whole sermon series is being called Radically Committed, No Turning Back. And I just want to start this series by saying Jesus was radically committed to you. And no matter what happened, are you hearing me this morning? No matter what happened, no matter how bad Monday was, no matter if the car didn't start, no matter if your cat left a mess on the floor, because you know your dog wouldn't. No matter. We should be like Jesus and no turning back. I want to think about Luke 23. And I want to think about Luke 23, and I want to think about it this way. I want to think about it from the perspective of Pilate. And I want to think about it from the perspective of Simon the Cyrene. And then lastly, I want to think about it from the perspective of God the Father. By the way, who's getting the newsletter? All right, in the newsletter, there's an extended blog, and it's called Cross Reflections. And you can see these perspectives going deep. But I want to think about this for a minute. Pilate is just a Roman governor. He's just going through the day of trying to rule the part of Judea that the emperor expects him to run. But there's this big festival in town that weekend. Like it's bigger than Vienna's fall festival. It's bigger than even, Vienna's big festival they have downtown. There's a big and it's causing all these people to come in and want Pilate's time. Everybody wants a minute of Pilate's time to solve some dispute that is going on. And then these Jewish leaders come, and they're coming in to Pilate, and they're presenting this guy named Jesus. And they're saying to Pilate, this guy is trying to overthrow your government. They're saying to Pilate, this guy is an enemy of the state. But Pilate, he's just your typical bureaucrat. He's not on the Jews' side, and he's not on Jesus' side. I know we like to make him into a big villain because, we'll see where the chapter goes. But Pilate's really just a guy doing his job. It's a good job, and the pay is really good. But his job. And when this Jesus guy comes into his chambers, and he looks at this Jesus guy, something connects in Pilate's heart. And Pilate looks at Jesus, and he notices something about Jesus that you can notice too if you look. Do you have enough faith to muster enough faith to even look at Jesus like Pilate did? We can do better than Pilate, right? And he said, here is this Jesus of Nazareth, brought in for me to rule, brought into me to judge. And he's not afraid. Not only is he not afraid, but when my eyes connect with his, I see this Pilate, of this Jesus guy, have compassion for Pilate. Pilate is not even sure why Jesus has compassion for him, but Pilate is like, I've had many prisoners in front of me, and when there's prisoners in front of me, they don't look at me like they feel sorry for me. They look at me like they want me to feel sorry for them. And so, there Pilate is with Jesus. And Jesus, I don't want to call him a cool cucumber. He's calm, though. He's steady. He's not anxious. He must have heard a good sermon series last month about not being anxious. But there's something about him. And Pilate just can't believe what they're saying. So Pilate gets right to the point, and Pilate's just like, Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? Now listen, this is a loaded question. Because if Jesus says he's the king of the Jews, he's claiming he's of higher authority than Pilate. Maybe not the emperor, because from Pilate's perspective, Rome is over Israel. But Pilate is not a king. He's just a governor. So Pilate is like, okay, they brought him in. They say he's a traitor. They say he's out to get me. Let me ask them straight for myself. Are you the king of the Jews? Now I have so many things I love about Jesus, but I love the way Jesus deals with conflict. I study the way Jesus deals with conflict. I want to be the way Jesus is with conflict, because this is pretty head-on conflict. Pilate is testing him. Go ahead and say to the king of the Jews that I will put you to death because you will be a threat. Now, can Jesus lie? He is the king of the Jews. But if he now says, I am the king of the Jews, Pilate is ready. He's like, okay, I'm going to get him. It's going to be right. I don't know why he's looking at me like that, but then Jesus opens his mouth, and Pilate begins to understand the depths of Jesus' compassion. Pilate, who wasn't ready for this. Jesus didn't say he was the king of the Jews. He didn't say he wasn't the king of the Jews. He said something even better. This is a one thing that will end conflict instantly. If you find yourself in conflict, this will end it instantly. Tell the other person they're the one that's right. Jesus simply says, you have said so. Now, what's Pilate going to do? Is he going to have this man crucified for agreeing with him? No, Jesus defuses the conflict. Does Jesus have the right to conflict with Pilate? Absolutely. He is more than the king of the Jews. This so moved Pilate that Pilate announced to the chief priests and to the crowd, I find no basis for a charge against this man. Did Pilate find Jesus guilty or innocent? There's one person in the front over here. I'm glad it's not the same person on this side who's thankful. Did Pilate find Jesus innocent or guilty? Innocent. And it's not going to be the only time he comes to this conclusion. He doesn't know what to do, though. He can't find anything wrong with him. Jesus didn't fall for the trap of head-on aggression. Jesus just kept looking at him in that way with those eyes that Jesus has. And for Pilate, it was like he was looking into the eyes of someone sweet or something sweet that loved him. It's like he was looking into the eyes of a little lamb. And Pilate's heart is beating because there is something about Jesus. See, I want to be the kind of radical disciple that when I'm in the crunch moment, I can sync up with God like Jesus does. I'm definitely not there. You all seen that before. But Pilate looks at Jesus and he says a very smart thing. I ain't taking the rap for this. That's a bureaucrat answer if I ever heard one. I ain't taking the rap for this. So he's like, back to Herod you go. After all, if you're the king of the Jews, Herod is the one who's representing Israel. That is his position. He is not representing Rome. He was appointed by Rome to represent Israel. The governor, Pilate, is representing Rome. And it just so happens, guess who's in town? Because of that messy, busy holiday, that festival, that Passover thing. So Pilate is like, let's send him back. Now, Herod wants to see Jesus. He's all down for this because he has heard about Jesus. And he's kind of like some Christians. He's heard about the miracles. He's heard about the power of Jesus. He's heard about Jesus can do some freaky magic show that no one can explain. And Herod just wants to see Jesus to see if he can see a miracle. And then Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people. And he said to them, "You brought me this man as one who is inciting the people to what? Rebellion. And I have examined him in your presence and have found him guilty? No basis for your charges against him." Twice. Now Pilate declares Jesus guiltless in front of Herod. And if that's not enough, he goes on to reference Herod. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done what? Do you know this was in the Bible? Because I thought Pilate was a bad guy. But if I'm keeping track, that's 3 times. With an endorsement from another king too. Done nothing deserving death. Now this is interesting. But I will punish him and then release him. Pilate's got a problem. You know what his problem is? His problem starts with a P. His problem starts with a P and ends with an R. Pilate's got a problem that most of us are seeking to get. You know that most of us are in the business of looking for problems. You know that's why we're so good at finding them, right? We find problems because we go looking for them. And Pilate went looking for this problem, and he got it, and now he's got it today. What is it, Mateo? Out of the mouth of babes. Not quite a babe, but I knew you when you were. Power. He's got to answer to the people. So even though he's 3 times plus an endorsement from the regional king to declare Jesus guiltless, he's like, we're just going to kick him around a little bit anyways. Because we want to let him go, but we don't want to jeopardize our problem. Because what do we love to do? Hold on to our problems. Oh, come on. You know it's true. Because you know the answer to most of the problems. But we find it hard to let go. And so does Pilate. So there Pilate finds himself. He wants to let Jesus go. He plans to let Jesus. He even thinks for a moment it's within his power, within his problem wheelhouse, to let Jesus go. And then the people start yelling, "Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him!" And normally, in a situation like that, Pilate would just say, "Hey, it's Passover, that big festival, is a Jewish holy thing. So, I won't do this terrible thing on that day because I wouldn't." Oh, wait, they're the ones asking for it. Now Pilate understands why Jesus was looking into his eyes with compassion. Because from the moment Jesus walked into the room, he knew where this was going. And he knew the decisions Pilate would have to face. No. How about we crucify Barabbas instead? How about we crucify this criminal instead? No. We want Jesus. And deep in the gut of Pilate, like it's deeper than the heart. It's deeper than the mind. You know when you feel it in the gut. Like a pain that goes right through it. Condemnation sinks into him as he watches his soldiers fulfill his command to cast lots and send Jesus to Golgotha. And as Pilate sees Jesus heading out towards Golgotha, Simon the Cyrene finds himself, of all things, the most, you're going to relate to him, in a traffic jam. On a holiday. Simon's I'm here to sacrifice this lamb. I'm here to fulfill Torah. I'm here to do what's supposed to happen. And everybody knows you don't do crucifixions on Jewish holidays. So he's like, my donkey's GPS must have gone really wrong. I'm just trying to get to the temple. Why? Why is there this traffic jam? And so, I know you guys aren't like this, right? But he is. But I know you guys aren't. Simon, he's like, I'm going to go on the shoulder of the road and get ahead. Not because I'm cheating to get ahead of all these people, but I want to know why the traffic jam's there. Simon gets close to Jesus, and a centurion steps out of the crowd and starts bossing him around. And Simon's like, look, thank you, officer, for pulling me over. I'm having a great day. I hope you are too. We appreciate your civic responsibility. That's because that's how you do it, right? But this state trooper he's not going to take that answer. As the soldiers laid seize of him, took him away from Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way from the country to put the cross on him, and made him carry it behind Jesus. And Simon, he doesn't even know why. Why am I carrying this cross for Jesus? Who is this Jesus? What could he have done to make Jews want to crucify one of our own? on our highest holy day. And as he's going behind Jesus, lifting the cross with him, there are these women, and they are getting in the way, slowing things down even more. Like, I don't want to see this guy get crucified, is what he's thinking, but, I still want to make it to temple in time to make my sacrifice. So if I have to help him, we have to do this, let's get on with it, all right? But there's these women now, and they're stopping, and they're crying, and they're weeping, and they actually kneel down and start praying. In the middle of all the chaos. And then something happens that Simon was not ready for. He could understand why these ladies are praying for this criminal who is about to be crucified, but he cannot understand why the criminal starts praying for the ladies. Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. I want to be radically committed like Jesus. I'm not, but I want to be. I want to be able to pray for the people who are trying to wrongfully kill me. Simon is just so perplexed. They put Jesus up on this cross, and starting to make sense to Simon for a minute. He's like, okay, this guy's over here on the other side. He's clearly a thief. Okay, this guy over here on the other side of Simon's thinking, he's clearly a thief. So I guess the guy in the middle must be a thief. It makes sense, right? But then Simon's like, oh, here he goes. Another long prayer. He's going to pray again. But when he hears what Jesus prays, Simon is shaken to the core, is not just in his gut anymore. He starts to weep. For Jesus, between two thieves, lifts up his head to his Father. And asks God himself, asks Yahweh himself to forgive them. Father, like the guy is dehydrated, the guy is bleeding, the guy is naked, like the guy is hanging between two thieves, like there's bad smells, there's bad sounds, there's but the guy, Simon's like, who is this guy? Because the guy who should be like panting to save his life, trying this, because what they would do is try on the nails to lift themselves up, because crucifixion kills you by suffocation. Because you can't hold yourself up and your body mass goes below your lungs. This guy, Simon knows. Not the first crucifixion he's heard about. He knows this guy should be trying to use every breath he has to live. And instead, he's praying. And not even for himself. This guy is nuts. Father, forgive them. For they don't know what they are doing is wrong. How should the Father answer this prayer? We know what Pilate did coming face to face with Jesus. We know how Simon processed coming face to face with Jesus. What about the Father? You see, like Pilate and like Simon, we are like them. We were interjected and they were interjected at a certain point in the story. But the Father has seen how everything Jesus has done for all eternity has been deliberately leading to this prayer. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know if he should answer it. I don't know why he would answer it. And I don't think God can be tempted. And yet, at the same time, my human CPU cannot calculate how the Father looks backwards through all eternity and seeing that everything his Son has ever did was to lead to this prayer. Justice says he should not answer it. But he has seen that Jesus deliberately made the choices to ask this prayer for the people. What do you think? Should he? I mean, all we did is look at the storyline from the palace, from Pilate. And as we looked at the storyline from the palace, from Pilate, but the Father, because it says in the book of Revelation that Jesus was not only the Lamb who looked into the eyes of Pilate, at the most crucial time in the universe, but was slain from the foundation of the world. And the Father must look at everything Jesus has done. And I can't tell you if you should, but I want to ask you an honest question. Now, an honest question. An honest question. The implication is an honest answer. Because I know the answer you want to say. I know the answer you think you're supposed to say. And I would challenge you to think about pride goes before a fall. Because Peter thought he knew how he was going to answer too, didn't he? That's a different sermon, how that turned out. By the way, we get down on Judas. Maybe I'll talk about him next Easter. We get down on Judas. But let me remind you, Jesus never said Satan was in Judas. He did say Satan was in Peter. Oh, yes, and Judas never promised Jesus he would die for him. But Peter promised Jesus he would die for him. Oh, yes, Judas betrayed Jesus once. But Peter did it 3 times, and the last time to his face, cussing him out. Surprisingly, the Bible tells us a lot about human nature. Would you? if you had the power to answer that prayer, would you? In 1984, there was an interesting news story that captivated America for a moment. Gary Palucci had his 11-year-old child kidnapped and abused. And Gary struggled because he couldn't forget the day his son Jody was born. Gary struggled because he couldn't forget the day his wife said, "It's your turn to change the diapers, man up." Some of you men, like, I never had that experience. But for Gary, he didn't even mind that. He remembered the first step. He remembered the training wheels coming off the bicycle. It was like he had an eternity of a relationship with his son that just kept coming back to his mind. I'm going to need to sip my tea because it's getting intense. When they caught the kidnapper, he was across state lines, which is good for two reasons. It's bad for the kid. We already know what happened to the kid is bad. But it's good for two reasons. It's a felony and a federal felony. And the feds rarely lose. But it also meant he had to be transported back. And since this case, even before TikTok was viral, oh, come on. All right. Since this case was viral, the media was there. The news networks were there. It was live on national TV. Gary knew. What had happened to his child demands justice. Was he wrong? It did demand justice. So he slipped out of that crowd and killed Doucette, shot him dead. And there ain't no denying it. It didn't just happen in a packed airport. It happened in a packed airport and live in front of the whole nation. Good luck finding a defense lawyer. But it wasn't a defense lawyer he needed. It was a judge. And although he was clearly found guilty, I don't know what to say. The judge declared his sentence suspended. He was allowed to murder someone on live TV. This is even before HBO. Still no humor. You guys got to get caught up with culture. going to keep trying. But from a human perspective, while what Gary did was wrong, it was also justifiable. How would you handle that prayer from Jesus? Because I just showed you not only the way one father handled it, but the way our whole nation endorsed it. It's human nature. And this case today is still used as case law and still hotly debated in all law schools. And some people say, no, it's a good case because he was found guilty. We declared him a murderer. But he'd been through enough. So we didn't make him pay the penalty for the crime. So we can rationalize very well. But my question is, should the Father answer the prayer? Because I'm sure Jody was a great son. But Jesus was flawless. There's an old hymn. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it. I tried. Maybe we'll find it another time. But I want to read you the chorus. Because sometimes hymns have deep lyrics. Amen? I thought I had hymn fans here. I'll forgive you for the pop culture, but this is what the old hymn says. Maybe. There it goes. He could have called 10,000 angels to destroy the world and set him free. And he wouldn't have been wrong. He could have called 10,000 angels. But he died alone. For you and me. That's the Father's radical forgiveness. And can we remain full of apathy when we understand the Father's radical forgiveness?